Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Coffee with Carl. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the Series LLC. I get a lot of questions on Series LLCs. They are really cool tools, but they need to be appropriately used, otherwise, you can run into some issues. So, starting out, I wanted to talk about a little bit of some of the neater points of Series LLCs, meaning basically what you can do with them and how they're structured. If you imagine a parent LLC, so we call this the parent series, and then you can set up a bunch of little cells that go along with it. What's really neat is that in series or states that recognize series LLCs, it's basically you get the net effect of setting up a bunch of separate LLCs, except here's a good benefit, especially in Texas, is that there's not an additional filing requirement, or it doesn't require an additional registered agent in order to maintain those series cells. The biggest important, or the most important part about a series that you want to be sure you're keeping track of is that the accounting on these things has to be immaculate, meaning they're set up to be easy to use, very flexible in the way that you can actually use the cells. You can even have separate EINs for each of the cells. You can have them taxed differently. You can do lots and lots of things, but if you're not careful and you don't know what you're doing, you can really cause some confusion. And the downside of that is when you go to, if you have to go to court and there's confusion, the judge is actually fairly likely to collapse the whole thing and say it's all one LLC, unless that accounting is perfect and unless you're observing all of those corporate formalities in which we teach in our structure implementation class. Very important piece there. Another thing to consider as well is that, say, if I had a Texas Series LLC and I was going to do an investment or tried to use that Series LLC in, say, California, California is going to want to charge that franchise tax for not only the parent series, but for each of those cells as well. So while they're very interesting tools and very cool and flexible, you want to make sure you're talking with an experienced advisor before you set one up. Some other common problems I've run into with series is a lot of times there's difficulty getting bank accounts open for them. So you need to work with a bank that understands what they are and how they'll get them set up. Off the top of my head, I know in Texas, I work with a lot of Texas clients. I do know there's a BBVA in Cedar Park that knows how to set up the accounts for them. Other things you can run into is with your title company or lenders. They may not know how to treat them as well. They are valid LLCs. You can use them, but with being something that's a little bit outside of the box, if you want to keep up all the formalities or work within them, you need to find people who understand how they work, and title companies, banks, and services along those lines that are familiar with them so that you don't run into any hiccups along the way.